Good to start?
Yes, sir. Yeah, good to start, sir. Okay. Yeah. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the experts' opinion on the Union Budget 22-23 being conducted by MyLogic Business Management School. Myself, I'm Chaitanya. I'm a certified management accountant, and I'm the director of MyLogic Academics Department. I was given the responsibility of introduction of the welcoming the panelists and introduction of them, and then I'll pass it on to the panelists. Okay, firstly, we are a MyLogic Business Management School. It's a edutech platform which is created to cater to the needs of global financial certifications. You can find more information on www.mylogicvideos.com. So, firstly, I will introduce to the panelist, CAV Ramakrishnan Sir.
Okay.
So, CAV Ramakrishnan Sir, he is a member of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, and is a member of Company Secretaries of India, and also a member of Institute of Cost Accountants of India. And he is qualified from Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, London. Ramakrishnan Sir joined TCS Finance in 1999 and served as the finance head of TCS North America for about 7 years. In 2017, he took up the position of Chief Finance Officer of TATA Consultancy Services Limited, TCS. And during his tenure of 4 years as CFO, TCS, the market capitalization of the company doubled to over $150 billion. In his overall professional career of 40 years, he has worked with Tata Motors, Tata Elxsi, and in the consumer electronics industry. And he was recognized as the best CFO, second place in 2018, and in 2020, and best CFO in the first place in 2019. We welcome you, sir. We are very happy to have you on board. Welcome to the session, sir.
Thank you.
Now I introduce SR Nair Sir. He's Sridharan Radhakrishnan Nair, known as SR Sir for us. He's a serial entrepreneur, author, adjunct professor, and a mentor. He has chaired several professional and non-governmental organizations in Kerala, India, such as the Kerala Management Association, Indian Society for Training and Development, the Indus Entrepreneurs Kochi Chapter, Rotary Cochin International, and he's a co-founder for Better Kochi Response Group. He is very well known in the business, social, and academic and professional circles in the state of Kerala. And he's a well-known public speaker who provides counsel to several governmental and education and non-governmental organizations and individuals in areas such as management, entrepreneurship, marketing, and technology. Currently, he is the mentor and director for MyLogic Business Management School. Welcome, sir. We are very happy to have you on board. And now I introduce Mr. G. Srikumar Sir. He is the moderator for this session also. Srikumar Sir is a chartered accountant. He is a formerly director and partner at the JRS and Company Chartered Accountants for 10 years. Overall, 41 years of industry and practice experience he is having. And he has held the role of CFO, Head of Finance at organizations like Telco, Dotsal, Harrison Malayalam Limited, Reva Electric Company, and Volvo, etc. Currently, he is the director for MyLogic and independent director and members of IICA. Welcome, sir. And now I welcome Ms. Asha. Asha is triple qualified. She is a chartered accountant. She's a company secretary and a cost accountant also. She cleared CIMA strategic level and diploma in IFRS also. And she is having 14 years of experience in IFRS, US GAAP, and Indian GAAP accounting and regulatory matters. She is having 12 years of experience in academics, trainings and corporate trainings, lecturing in seminars, conferences, and of course, presenting the articles also. Currently, she is the director in finance, accounting, and advisory services of a team in EY of Bangalore. Welcome, Ms. Asha. Welcome to the session on budget, union budget by MyLogic.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
And last but not the least, I would like to introduce Mr. Vinod Chandran, who is a founder of MyLogic. Vinod Chandran is a chartered accountant, and he is having 15 years of corporate experience in leading Indian and multinational companies. Parallelly, he is associated in delivering the finance management programs, which has been his passion, and mentoring over thousands of finance professionals in undergoing a successful career transformation. Currently, he is the CEO of MyLogic. Welcome, sir. Welcome to the session.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, I request Mr. Ramki sir to take over this session and express his opinions on the union budget.
Hey, thank you very much, MyLogic, for inviting me for this session. And I also want to extend my greetings to all the student participants. I wish them all the very best in their pursuit of their academic careers and in professional lives. So this is supposed to be an expert opinion on the budget. I can very clearly confess that I am not an expert on the subject, but having witnessed and heard and read on budgets for so many years, many of you may or may not recall, may not know, when the union budgets were released, Mr. Nani Palkiwala, who all of you must be aware of, a very leading jurist and leading lawyer, used to have a session on the union budget. It used to be always held 2 or 3 days immediately after the budget was announced. And these sessions used to be mega events. It used to be held in Brabant Stadium in Bombay, or the Vidhan Sauda in Bangalore, or huge, and it only people used to stand in the aisles and listen. It used to be a 1.5 hours or 2 hours of brilliant extempore rendition of the budget. So it's a budget has been a very exciting activity in many years. And if you have noticed in the run-up to the budget, you will find a lot of media experts on various channels, and some pink press having a lot of discussions on what the budget is going to do, what is the finance minister going to say, and what tax proposals are coming. A lot of excitement gets built up. But what is this budget? Essentially, there are 3 or 4 elements. Number one is giving a snapshot of the receipts and payments or income and expenditure of the government of India for the immediate past financial year or immediate running financial year, and the estimates and the projections for the next financial year. So that is the basic objective of the budget. I'll come to a few nuances around that. The second element which comes in is it also provides an opportunity for the government to give a direction or talk about the direction of the economy, direction of various policy initiatives, the thinking of the government on various progressive measures, etc. Third, it's also a time which is very unique in India to launch a number of schemes, whether it is in the area of social engineering or
union budget 22-23. Yeah.
Number of schemes which get announced. And the fourth typical is the taxation proposal. So this is the general. And if you look at the countries around the world, everyone has a budget presentation. US has a very elaborate process. It's a multi-step process. UK and many of the other Commonwealth countries, we have something similar. But India is unique where we also use, the budget is also used to make a lot of policy pronouncements as well as schemes which get rolled out. Now coming to the budget estimates itself, typically the budgets used to be earlier presented in the first week of March, and now they are pushed forward to first week of February for very good reasons. And when you talk about the estimates for the current year, the actual information is available only perhaps up to December or so. So there is a lot of estimation of what the receipts and payments would be for the next 3 months or 2 months up to the financial year end. So there is something called an advance estimates or a budget estimates. And typically, if you look at it, year after year, you will have the revisions to that number by April, May, etc. And the revised estimates are always a little different from the budget estimates. And more often than not, on the revenue side, the revised estimates will be lower, and the expenditure side, it will be higher. Now, this is a function of all of us know that information is based on the data. So the extent of the data accuracy is what will drive. So this is one factor which has been there. It has progressively a lot of improvements have been made, but this is a function which is there. The second element is government accounting is largely cash accounting, which means whatever receipts you get is what is considered as an income, and whatever payments you make is considered as an expense. So if the tax is collected before March, it is considered as the income of the current year. And if the expenditure is made only in the month of April, it is considered as expenditure of the next year. So to that extent, there is a little bit of difference from accrual accounting, which almost all businesses are very familiar with and which we follow. So this also has a play on the budget numbers in terms of the receipts and payments. And the third is also a little bit of like subsidies and some of the off-balance sheet type of funding which goes on, which doesn't come into that. But again, I must say that in the last few years, on both these two aspects, there has been a lot of corrections which have happened. So why is these numbers important? Because it finally leads to whether there is a budget surplus or a budget deficit. And that budget deficit becomes a very important number, because if your deficit is higher, then it implies that you will borrow more. And because if you borrow more, then the cost will go up, etc., etc. And it becomes difficult for businesses to run their operations. So the fiscal deficit or the deficit is always a big number, and the press and the economists, the experts used to spend a lot of time on this number. So there is something called a financial or a fiscal responsibility budget management act, which came some time back. And it was agreed that the fiscal deficit will not cross 3% of the GDP. And in exceptional years, give another 0.5%. The same thing was supposed to be done by all the states. But of course, with the pandemic, there has been a relaxation. And the current year, the announcement has been, the estimate has been that the fiscal deficit will be almost close to 6.4% of the GDP. So, but this is another number which, there are, of course, a lot of debates around whether fiscal deficit is so important and should be tracked so closely, etc. But that debate we will leave to later. So this is on the part of the budget receipts and payments, etc. And that leads to the tax proposals, essentially. Because if you have to increase your revenue, one of the elements is the taxation. And typically, in the taxation, there are 2 or 3 elements which happen. In this year also, there was a lot of expectation that there will be corrections to personal income tax, but really in the budget, there was no, almost nil changes on personal taxation. The second element which used to be a factor is whenever there are state elections around, could everybody be on mute, please? Yeah, thank you. So when there are state elections around, there are typically SOPs or tax proposals or schemes, etc., which are tailored for individual states, etc. This used to be a problem. But again, in this year, while there were expectations around that, the budget has been almost completely clean on that aspect. In fact, there has been no announcements which are linked to any state elections which are underway. This is another important thing. The more important is, with all the policy pronouncements, in the budget document, you will not find any mention whether these are all supposed to be implemented over a longer period of time or a medium period of time or a short period of time. A layman would assume that all these schemes which are announced will all get implemented within the next 12 months. But the fact of the matter is it is not possible. And many of these schemes will require legislative changes, either existing laws to be amended, modified, or new laws to be enacted, or a lot of multi-dimensional impact studies to be made. And so if you look back at the budget speeches of several years, and if you do an analysis, you will find that some of the policies, some of the schemes have been implemented fully, though perhaps with some delay, but they have been implemented so beautifully over the years. Some partially. They start with a bang, and after a few years, they go out with a whimper. And some perhaps never get implemented. So when you read all these schemes and the next day morning, you open the paper and everybody and anybody giving a comment saying, oh, this has been done, so it's going to make a huge difference. Yes, you have to take it with a little bit of a pinch of salt, because the devil is in the implementation. And the implementation is, as I said, depends on many factors. But having said that, over the years, tremendous amount of changes have been made. And the budget, while is one platform where these are announced, this is a continuing activity, and through the year, many of these changes get implemented on a very progressive basis, and we must all be proud of progress which has been made. But one should be conscious of the fact that just because announcements have been made, we should not assume that they are all getting implemented immediately and the impact will be there immediately. The other aspect is also that the agile mode. I think I should talk about that in the current year budget. I think the finance secretary also mentioned about how they have, for instance, the response to the pandemic, use the agile method of implementation. And for those of you who are not familiar, the agile is contra to what is called a waterfall method. So in any typical anything, whether it's a development or an implementation, you start off on an incremental basis. You understand the requirements thoroughly and then start doing the implementation. And then at every checkpoint, you wait and check and then proceed to that. That's a waterfall method. And it has its own, while it has been there for several years, it has a certain flexibility is less. Once you commit, you have to go through the entire hog. Whereas the agile method, you can break it down into parts and also do it not necessarily on anything. You have much more flexibility. So why I mentioned this is a very important aspect in all our various spheres of life, in your professional life, in problem solving, or in developing something new, or in handling a situation. An agile method of working is very important. Is gaining a lot of traction. And it's very heartening to note that the government is also saying that we have implemented certain things on that basis, and we will also continue to do that on that basis. Now, coming to, I talked about the tax proposals. So this year we didn't have any changes on the personal tax, etc., etc. There were a few changes which were required. For instance, startups, there was a provision where for 5 years they would have a tax holiday, and that has been extended by 1 more year because the last couple of years have been deeply impacted by the pandemic. But having said that, I must also mention there are a few small changes which were made in the tax area, which did not come in the economic press or in the reported much in the media at all. But these have a little bit of a far-reaching changes. These are aspects where on certain matters of taxation, there were some ambiguity which was there, whether it is supposed to be tax or not tax. For instance, cess which is collected along with taxes, should it be treated as a deductible expenditure or should it be treated as a not deductible? So over the years, assessees always claimed that it is a deductible, and the tax department said not, it is not. and it has gone up with multiple courts and there have been judgments. Now, what the government did is saying that no, cess is considered as a non-deductible expenditure. Fine. Having said that, it could have been made prospective, but they have said that it is retrospective. So similarly, there is some provision relating to expenditure incurred for earning tax exempt income. And if they said if there is no tax exempt income in a year, then the expenditure also cannot be claimed. Again, this is a provision where it has been litigated heavily. The government said that no, all along our idea was that it is not deductible, right? Now, again, it is retrospective. So this retrospective business is not a very good thing, because while so many things like faceless assessment and transparency is being driven, this seems a little out of the way. And already there are some commentaries by the experts, etc. And this will again get litigated. So that's an unfortunate part of it. While already our courts are clogged with so many cases, why add to that? So this could have perhaps been avoided. So that's some comment on the structure. Now, I think I talked about these things. Apart from the budget, there is also another document which one should go through, which is the economic survey. And this is a document which is typically present to the Parliament a day before the Union budget is released. And all of you must perhaps go through that document. For one reason, it has a lot of statistics and data on various macroeconomic indicators. It also sets out the direction of the economic activity, the economic policy making. And it's a very scholarly report, I would say. And over the years, there have been some phenomenal economic surveys which have been released. So I mean, you can look it up. You will see. But as a student in the area of finance, apart from following the budget, you should also read the economic survey. It's typically it is in multiple sections. But the initial sections you should compulsorily read, and the balance sections you can decide based on your area of interest or area of professional engagement. So I thought this is what I wanted to speak. I do hope that it meets some of the expectations of the participants and also the panelists. Thank you once again for the opportunity, and I'll. If there are questions later, I'll be glad to participate in that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your opinion on the union budget. Now I request Honorable and respected SR Sir to address the session.
Am I audible and visible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and will you give me the share screen option, please?
Yes, sir. You will be able to do that one, sir. Now.
Thank you. Is my screen visible?
Of course, sir.
Thank you. Yeah. Very distinguished panelist, Mr. Krishnan, former CFO of TCS, Mr. Srikumar, who is also a co-director to me in this fledgling venture called MyLogic Business School, Asha Merugu, Director at EY, of course, Vinod Chandran and Chaitanya. I must definitely state that it is indeed a privilege to share a podium with Mr. Krishnan. I already had this, the privilege and luck earlier when I was actually moderating a session with Mr. Krishnan about a year back. That time he was actually performing as a CFO of TCS. It was a fantastic meeting with so many, in excess of about 150 members participating online to listen to him. Great. I'm also happy to share the podium with Mr. Srikumar, Asha, and others who are part of the MyLogic Business School. Now, when we were doing these discussions earlier, I told them that, as exactly pointed out by Ramki Sir, that fundamentally budget to start a day or a couple of days before that, the economic survey details are released. And if a student, and we see that most of the people who will be listening to us either here or online are the students, people, the students category of people. They may be CMA students or ACCA students, or some of them who must have passed out, alumni, etc. And so if any one of you really wanted to get into the understanding of the budget, you should actually start with going through the previous day economic survey report. And that's what Ramakrishnan Sir has mentioned very correctly. So, and once you get that, you will get the trend, you will get the directions that probably the budget is going to take. But it also comes out with a lot of factual inputs about in the last year's budget, how did it behave, and what were the corrections required, and what are all the findings. And that we can, when somebody really analyze that with the current budget soon after it is released, it gives a fairly good direction, and based on which only the comments are normally made by people, economists, entrepreneurs, corporators, politicians, ministers, etc. Okay, so my endeavor here in the next 10 minutes or so would be to essentially predominantly take you through some of the important announcements, some of the important findings that one has read in the economic survey, and to give you an overall picture. Okay, there are people who are, and I feel really humbled that I'm the least qualified guy among all of you here. And in fact, if you go through Ramakrishnan Sir's qualifications, there isn't a qualification that he has left in the finance management sector. So is with Asha. For a young age, Asha has really completed 3 to 4 different levels of qualifications. And of course, Vinod is a chartered accountant, Mr. Srikumar is a chartered accountant. So I happen to be the humble student category of a person among this, sitting with such august company, trying to give some of the findings that one had seen, or one has heard, one has observed in the budget. With that preface, let me start. Yeah, this is you must have seen these graphics somewhere in the newspaper, maybe in the videos, or maybe in the image form, about the pandemic hit that has happened on Indian GDP. And it is very clearly so. It is 2019, 20, 2020, 21, and 21, 22. The full picture is not there. They have taken Q1 and Q2 and Q3, Q4 of the 21, 22. At least Q3 should have been added, but since it is a data which is being gathered, and they have been able to come out with, and you would have seen the first hit is the first wave, and the second hit is the second wave. And what you see is the GDP, which is in a color different. The blue, that is value add, which actually does not show the taxes in that, but both of the curve actually shows this, and you understand the hit that it has taken, particularly Q1, which has gone down very, very deeper into that. Okay, now some of the inputs that I have taken as highlights of the economic survey is what is seen by you. The GDP, and you all understand that by till the 31st of this month, we are on a current year. Okay, so whatever announcements that happened in the 1st of February is for the next year. Okay, it is for the next year. So that is for the year beginning with the 1st of April, ending with the 31st of March 2023. So we are still in the current year, that is 21-22 year, and this the next month, that is March 31st, until when this year will run. Okay, so some of those inputs that you see here still is pegged or expected, etc., because the year hasn't ended. That is what you will see here. So it says the current year GDP growth of FY 21-22 is pegged at about 9.2%, which is a decent one, and which is generally at par with the real growth nations of the world. Okay, and the next year, that is 20-23, the GDP growth is estimated to be between 8 and 8.5. This could change, because there are external factors, there are internal factors, but predominantly based on the surveys and based on the findings, the survey feels that the survey committee and the people who have done the research and analysis feels that we should be able to go through, given the conditions, we should be able to have a growth rate of about 8 to 8.5% for the year 20-23, that is beginning the 1st of April 2022. Okay, and the three areas that is we call primary, secondary, and tertiary. That is what you have seen in here. The primary being agriculture. It is felt that COVID-19 hit sector, the least COVID-19 hit sector was agriculture, that means by till the end of 31st of this March, will grow by 3.9 to 4% by 21-22. Now that actually is see, if you really look at it, lots of people in the southern part of the country, including Bombay, Maharashtra, had gone through a difficult third wave too. But many of the people located in the cow belt, or let's say the North India, the Central India, to some extent East India and the Northwest India, etc., they did not have the level of COVID hit as it has happened in the southern part of India and West, as related to the third wave, which is Omicron wave. Okay, so funnily, this has not really hit India. That is what it is seen, and all of you will know that India was very badly hit during the second wave. The first wave was not a hit because it was a lockdown that has resulted in businesses going down, and none of the businesses not knowing as to what to do. The second one, while it was coming up, and that has hit India very badly, and that is when you had seen a lot of deaths also had been registered. Okay, so the third wave, while it has not really made any major impact at the North India, had made Omicron impact in the southern part of India, but it is generally presumed that agriculture was not hit by COVID, and it has grown to 3.9% growth in agriculture actually is a fairly good growth compared to the fact that predominantly this has been growing at about 2.5 and less than 3% actually. And the industrial sector, which we called as a manufacturing sector, the growth has been for the current year, it is expected to grow and finish the growth by about 11.8%. And the services sector, which is actually the tertiary sector, but it is the largest component of the whole of GDP, we will be growing by about 8.2%. And you add up together, you will be getting somewhere close to about 9.2%. And that is what the economic survey indicators are. I take you further to the other major features. Okay, the spend on the social services. When I say about social services, it is predominantly on health and education. Okay, social services hiked by about 9% to Indian rupees 71.61 crore in FY22, and there is a slight growth, which is the announcement already has come that it will go up to 85-90 crores as far as the incoming year is concerned. India's total growth, exports also, it is expected to grow by about 16.5%. It's a very good growth, and it is actually growth at par with the pre-pandemic level of growth of exports. And you will know that predominantly the export that we register here is related to the IT. Today we have IT behemoths such as TCS and the organization which was whose destinies were controlled by people like Mr. Rama Krishnan, and having 500,000 plus employees, one of the largest employers in the country, the largest employer in the country, and one of the largest employers of the world. And you know that, okay, they are the ones who had been actually giving fillip to this export, because predominantly most of them are IT and software and intellectual property. So that is what they say, 16.5% export. Survey says that railways will emerge as engine of national growth. Okay, there are a lot of importance being given to it. Even day before yesterday, I was listening. Of course, it is part of the election campaigning and etc. that Prime Minister had been going across the cow belt, the 5-6 states where the election practically is getting to be over. Announced that, okay, we will have between Bombay and Ahmedabad, we will have bullet train, between Delhi and Bombay, super high speed rail, etc. coming. So predominantly, it is expected that as an engine of national growth. Railway it has been in the past, and you know something, most of the students here will know that in the country there used to be two major events. Now that railway budget announcement is now taken off. Otherwise, as a prelude to the budget, you used to see railway budget announcement, and that also used to be a huge jamboree, and analysis used to happen. You know why? Because railway is the one which actually binds the country, and it is the one which is taking care of the economic growth of the country. It is a real carrier of economics of the country, it used to be. And again, the importance is given to railways. High speed trains are coming, goods platforms, and lots of other corridors are being opened up connected to the railways, and that is why they said this. And 65,157 crore capital expenditure on railways until November 2021. So you know the December and other 3 months, if it add, it will actually exceed much more than that. So railways is a engine of growth. That is what our economic survey states. Going forward, okay, government consumption to grow by about 7.6%, surpassing the pre-pandemic levels. Actually, when pandemic sort of things happen, it is a government actually which actually giving fillip to the economy by getting the expenses done, and that is what you see here. And growth of imports also has gone up. In fact, it is grown higher than the exports. It is at 29.4%. There are deficits that we carry with countries like America, countries like China, etc. But those are things at the WTO level. But if you look at it, our imports also have gone up. Okay. And one important element that all of you should understand is the growth of the startup ecosystem, and that is something which all of us should be very proud of. After US and China, India is the third largest startup ecosystem. And I'm sure every alternate day or so, or at least every week, that you must be reading in the paper of companies becoming unicorn. Unicorn means, a valuation, not a sales, a valuation of over $1 billion. A valuation of over $1 billion. Just startup companies registering a valuation of over $1 billion, and we have more than about 50 now. 50 startups have already registered over $1 billion startup valuation. So if you really look at it, that is going to be the growth engine. Predominantly, most of them are in the technology segment, but these startups are really going to give a lot of growth possibilities for the country. And we are third in the world. And our ecosystem in the startup is actually spread between Bangalore, National Capital Region, Hyderabad, Mohali, Chennai, and of course Kerala. Kerala, when I say Cochin and Trivandrum combined together. In fact, last year Kerala Startup Mission received an award for being the top 3 startup ecosystem within the country, actually. So there is a lot of startup initiatives happening across the country. Of course, in Bangalore, where most of students must be listening to, must be staying, and that is a great news for all of us. And this is where a lot of plenty of new growth, new initiatives will happen, and a lot of funding will happen. And last year, 75 IPOs issues happened, which is worth about 89,000 crore, 89,066 crore between April and November, and others are going to be counted into this, as compared to 29 IPOs generated in year before last, that is 2020-21, which is about INR 14. But they had actually very high targets of in last year as well as year before last. The government in the budget had kept very high targets as far as divesting is concerned, which is not fructify. But last year it was much better, comparatively much better. And the last that you see in the level is INR 1.8 lakh crore raised through equity issues. Now that is equity issues means it also will have the IPO part of it, but otherwise the funding, venture capitalists, that is PEs, venture capitalists at various grades, and angels, etc., coming in investing, and put together more than about 1,81,000 crore raised through equity issues within the country, which also is very good. And predominantly this helps the FDI, or foreign reserves, as far as the country is concerned. Taking you forward, these are some of the positive developments that you see. 221 lakh individual demat accounts added between. That's very good. But these are all part of digitalizing. Whether you are trading, whether you are buying, selling, whatever you are doing. So 220 lakh individual demat account got added. Okay, that is a good thing. That is a good digitalizing part of it. UPI, that is Unified Payment Interface, taking center stage. And you see the number there in the 4.6 million transactions worth about 8.26 lakh crore happening in the month of December alone. That means digitalization in buying and selling in e-commerce segment, etc., EDI segment, electronic data interchange segment happening, and likely jump in the housing sales. Okay, which is very good. Most of you will know that in the last 5 to 6 years, housing has really collapsed. As an industry, it has collapsed. At the same time, most of you will realize that it is a force multiplier industry. If housing takes up, the sale of steel will happen, sale of cement will happen, sale of all those building materials will happen. The banks will start giving housing loan, and so many other things. The local economy will flourish. Masons, carpenters, materials. So housing, it has a 10x force multiplier. If housing goes up, every other part of the industry also attached will go up, and therefore it's a force multiplier. It has not been doing well in the last 5-6 years. Now a lot of fillip is given by state governments by reducing the duties. So in multiple states, so that housing industry is going to go up, and that is good. And housing industry is a force multiplier, for your understanding. Okay. Now some little budget highlights. I am not going to get into any because that will be done by Srikumar Sir as well as Asha and others. I was predominantly trying to concentrate on the survey, economic survey. There's 2 more slides that I have, and I'll finish with this. What you see is exactly the announcement of the budget that I have picked up from the press information bureau. This is the way it started, actually. Beginning of the Amrit Kal, the Amrit Kal. And And luckily, we now in the last 5-6 years see a lot of localization of words. Whereas in the previous governments, etc., people use a lot of English words. Okay, now we are seeing a lot of new words like Gati Shakti. Okay, like Amrit Kal. So these are all either Sanskrit or Hindi or Indian words. Okay, so
That's nice. Yeah.
yeah. Hello. Yeah, we
No, I
are.
was saying that's really nice.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Amrit Kal, 75 years independence completed. Okay, now they say, the government says it is a beginning of the Amrit Kal, 75 to 100, and move towards 100 years of independence. I mean, at one end we will happy. At another end, I also want to ask a question as an independent guy. How cocksure are you that you will be ruling 25 years further? So that is another question. Can't somebody come in and reverse the whole thing? These are all the questions being asked. But then from a perspective, they said that again, this is a beginning of Amrit Kal. Okay, 75 year plus. Okay. Now, in which this is just picked up from the Press Information Bureau report on the budget announcement as it is. Focus on all inclusive welfare. It is announced. But I, to be very honest with you, from the analysis of it, social welfare has not been given that much of an importance as compared to the capital investment. Okay, that has happened, but they say it is all inclusive welfare. I just reproduce as it is from the press. Promoting technology enabled development, energy transition, climatic action. Yes, climatic action, very, very important. Energy transition, we have to get into alternate energies in a big way, and of course technology enablement, and that is why digitalization become very important in all walks of our life. And of course, virtuous cycles, starting private investment. Private investment has to come more, and the government also. There's a lot of going. I mean, as per the governmental announcement, a lot of government-led PPC, private public investments, etc., will happen, and we are seriously looking forward to all that happening. This also is picked up from the page next. The Union Budget FY 20-23 aims to strengthen their infrastructure, and that is the PM Prime Minister's Gati Shakti program in inclusive development. Productivity enhancement and investment, sunrise opportunities, startup, etc., coming under that, and of course energy transition, alternate energy, all that actually will come into sunrise section. And then climate action, financing of investment in not only from the government side, from the public-private participation. Okay, this is what you had seen. If you really look at it, something close to this is, I have actually put it into text in the next step. But if you add receipts, if you add about 22 plus 17 and the expenditure side that is there. So let me just come to put that into words here. Okay, total expenditure of 20-23 is estimated to be about 39 plus lakhs crore as compared to 37. So from a perspective, if you look at it, FY 22 to FY 23, about 1.7 lakh crore excess of the expenditure. Receipts excluding borrowing is going to be much less. It will be 22.83, an increase of 4.8% compared to last year. But there is a chasm, there is a gap, there's a gorge, and that is about, you may know, because that is 39 minus 22, then that is going to be the and gross tax revenue is budgeted to increase by about 9.6% as compared to last year. Disinvestment, I have already told you about divesting in the last slides. Disinvestment now is pegged at about 65,000 crore. It is a realistic one as compared to the big numbers that they have put in the last two budgets. Okay, and the last is what I mentioned, the maroon color, which says outlay for capital expenditure stepped up sharply by 35 point some percentage. Okay, to 7.5 lakh crore for the year, the next year, that is 20 to 23, from INR 5.4. So it's a major area of focus, capital investment. Okay, so you know that this is a game where manufacturing, where service industry, where industrialization and etc. is going to be looked at with much more focus. Investment going to be looked at with much more focus. Capital intensive budget it is. Therefore, the welfare aspect, though the government has tried their best, but the focus on this year's, but that the budget of the next year, that is 20 to 23, is going to be a capital expenditure or capital investments. Okay, highlights fiscal deficit. This is something this is my last slide. Okay, this is something as students most of you must understand. Okay, and there is a thing which has happened. This is the law that is, or there's an act that is passed by the parliament I think this was passed by the parliament in 2003. And it is called FRBM, Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management, FRBM Act. Okay, which has given at the committee, at the parliamentary committee, it has recommended certain targets and certain limits to be maintained as far as fiscal deficit is concerned. You will understand fiscal deficit, that is, the revenue minus expense or expense minus revenue. Expense minus revenue is actually the deficit that happens. And it was said at the time that, of course, this was internal. Nobody expected a COVID to happen. Nobody expected any other external aspects to happen. And because of which, a lot of tumultuousness happened, and things were out of control. Things went out of control to the extent of this year, FY22, 6.9% is a fiscal deficit. Whereas in the Act, it was mentioned that up till years up to 31st of March, it will be at about 3%, and thereafter 2.8% in 2021. That is the last year, and 2.5% in 2023. So if you look at it, 2023 it is going to be 6.4% as against the kept target of 2.5%. So 6.4 minus 2.5 is equal to 3.1. But that is not predominantly not the government making. This has been the COVID making. This has been the pandemic making, and that is a collapse which has actually resulted in and when we are going through such tough time, many of the nations, many of the economists also advise the leaders that don't bother about the fiscal deficit, let it take its own curve, but let us see that put the house in order, feed the people so that they don't die of hunger and starvation. So I am not criticizing, but this is what we said, and this is where we are. And by next year, it is expected to be at 6.4. So that means post-pandemic. I dare to say it is post-pandemic now, because 3 waves having come. I very earnestly, based on a lot of data that I read and lot of discussion that I have with people, I think the pandemic is soon going to be an endemic thing. We are going to live with COVID, like we are living with influenza, like we are living with other fever categories. Okay, and we will have our own booster vaccines taken to see that we take care of ourselves and be safe against that. So pandemic going to be an endemic. When pandemic going to be an endemic, we will call it as after the COVID, AC. Okay, now what we call now is DC, during COVID, and there is another term called BC, that is called before COVID. So before COVID, now the during COVID, and then we go to the after COVID. The governments of the country, both at state level and the central level, has a lot of fiscal discipline issues and a lot of fiscal discipline initiatives to be implemented. On that I end. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And I'll be available here, maybe joining the discussions if it is there, or answering questions, whatever I know. Okay, on the very basic fact, on the very basic premise that I'm the least qualified guy in this group to answer. On to that, thank you. Get back to you, Chaitanya.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your very, very valuable inputs on the economic survey. Now I request, can I request SR Sir to stop this screen sharing?
I will do that. Wait a second. One sec. My screen got shorted.
And for the information of audience, we have a Q&A session where all your questions, what you're posting in the chat box, will be answered separately.
It is a little stuck here, Chaitanya. I'm sorry.
So what I can do is I can share the screen so that I think overrides.
Yeah, please do that. Please do that, Asha. I just got.
See if you can, if you can see the screen that I've shared. Can you see it?
Let me see. No.
We do that one as a host.
Yeah, you may do it as a host.
Yeah, if you just share it, then you can override the share function that he has. I did that, and it still tells me you are sharing the screen.
Chaitanya, you take care, please.
Yeah, I'm doing, sir. I'm trying.
Yeah, thank you very much. I got stuck.
Are you able to see the screen now?
No, Chaitanya, so we can't. Maybe you should. Can you make me the host?
I'm trying.
I think we can now. It's
yes.
gone.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Now I request Srikumar Sir to address the session.
Good afternoon and welcome to one and all. Welcome to students, finance professionals and aspirants as well as professional friends. A very warm welcome to all my illustrious panelists as well. Now, both Mr. Krishnan and Mr. Nair, by their eloquence, must have kept everybody awake on this Wednesday afternoon. So my task is a little easier to that extent. Now, my topic is limited to budget 22-23 and education perspective. I too must confess that I am not an expert on the budget, and I do not claim to be one. Yes, I am a student of economics and finance. Now, I would like to start with a quote from our Honorable Finance Minister in our earlier budget, 1920. Anai Pugunda Nilam said, on taxation advice to Pandya King, Aruvidai Nampi. That translates into a few pounds of rice from paddy that is harvested from a small piece of land won't suffice for an elephant. But what if the elephant itself enters the field and starts eating? What it eats would be far lesser than what it would trample over. The reference was to direct taxes, implying that the center wouldn't be like an elephant in a paddy field, needlessly taking more than what it needs and ultimately destroying hard-earned savings of the citizens in the process. This is very relevant today, and there is not one but a herd of elephants in the room in the form of inflation, unemployment, elections, pandemic impact, etc., etc. Hence, the budget is truly a balancing act. It cannot be just about robbing Peter to pay Paul. Now, I would like to just mention the major backdrop of this budget. It has been the pandemic. So basically the pandemic, as you know, India lost 5 lakh lives and the world about 58 lakhs. And it shattered so many families. And of course, this is the official lives lost. It could be definitely much more than this. 140 million Indians lost their jobs as per FCCI survey. Impact on the Indian economy has been very severe. And government had announced 20 lakh crore as stimulus. And incidentally, this is amounting to the entire tax receipts to the government for the year 2021. Pandemic, as you know, gave a wake-up call to all of us about the perils of climate change, the fault lines in our social sector, and health risks associated. It is certainly the most disruptive calamity that came to our planet since the Spanish flu 100 years back. Yes, it has given life lessons on the importance of social sector, that is, health, education, employment, and sanitation. All this put together amounts to 66% of the Human Development Index, HDI. Incidentally, India is ranked 131 out of 189 in HDI. The leaders being Norway, Ireland, and Switzerland, in that order. The next important backdrop, which I would like to just touch upon, is the National Economic Survey. This area has been already covered by Mr. Asha Nair, so I am not getting into the details. And the third important backdrop I would like to mention here is we have a vision as envisaged by Prime Minister, vision to be the global leader, that is the Vishwa Guru or Bhishma of the world. Now, if you look at it, reference to the ancient India, we have Aryabhat in maths, Charaka in Ayurveda, Baudian in maths, Sushruta medicine, Chanakya as economists. They are all the gems from the past, which should ignite our minds and inspire all of us. With this, I want to just come to the key takeaways from the budget. Now, as you understand that education and skilling has been allocated almost 1 lakh crores in the budget 22-23. And these are all detailed in the budget document, being states to be encouraged to revise syllabi of agricultural universities to meet needs of natural, zero budget and organic farming, modern day agriculture. The focus is now, as we understand, more towards organic farming, because the fertilizer-based farming leads to its own problems, pesticides, and it leads to illness. So this time the government has actually put a great focus on organic farming. One class, one TV channel program, which is already started under PM eVidya, is going to be expanded from 12 to 200 TV channels. So decimation of knowledge, information, training, they have chosen to take TV as a medium, which is supposed to be low cost, and it is going to reach out to the rural areas. So this is a very interesting phase and focus. Further, this will also act as a supplementary education in regional languages for the classes 1 to 12. Digital university to be set up to provide education. As mentioned by the Finance Minister, it's to be built on hub and spoke model. Hub will be maybe district headquarters will be the hub, and then from there it will go to the respective villages. So the capex could be on development of the hub with a proper IT support, and the spread of education and training could happen through the spoke model. One class, one TV channel to be implemented to provide supplementary education to children to make up for the loss of formal education due to COVID. Now, as you know, during the last 2 years, there have been serious loss of education man hours. Now, government plans to make it up through this medium. So, of course, each of these areas, there are certain challenges, and as these constraints have to be met, then only this can be made successful. Finally, national skill qualification framework has also been pronounced to cater to the dynamic industry needs. Here I would like to mention something on the national education policy. Now, all of you may have noticed there is no direct mention of this NEP, National Education Policy, in the budget. But as Mr. Ramakrishnan also highlighted, there are so many schemes and so many announcements which are made, and it is not necessary that the budget should make a mention of it specifically. So this has been announced 2020, July 2020. This policy has been announced, and it is supposed to be a landmark policy. And what is a good feature of this policy is that it is supposed to be multidisciplinary, and it has flexibility and focus on skilling. And as all of you would know, the total student population
Sir, it's. So can you hear me?
connect to
I believe.
Oh,
I
there was
believe
just a pause, I think. Sure. Yeah.
Please continue.
connect to higher education and connect to industry. As all of you know, whatever the education is announced or undertaken, it has to have a connect to the industry, without which it is meaningless. Now, if India is to achieve $5 trillion GDP, this has to happen through the educated people. By that only these things can happen. So once the population is educated, students are educated, then only they will add value to the industry. Now, along with this, what I would like to say, when we are doing this, we have to have digital drive and inclusiveness. Now, interestingly enough, 2.9 crore children do not have any digital device at home. And that's a serious constraint. And many of the houses, they may have only one device. And there will be challenges how that one device will cater to the householder and the children. And there are many children, then they have a challenge there as well. Connectivity is also an issue, but that will have to be met. The government has a target of 50 lakh kilometers to be covered by optic fibers. And this is how they have planned. Today it stands at 28 lakh kilometers. So they have a long way to go. And further, we would like to say that there is a digital divide in our country. There are people who are connected to IT, and there are certain people who are not connected. So it's actually a challenge. People who are connected and those who are not connected. This is actually a reason for the inequalities, socio-economic inequalities that has been our bane over the years. Now, I would like to also conclude, because of constraints of time, I would like to quote from Kautilya. As early in 3rd century, he has articulated on the importance of treasury. All undertakings are dependent first on the treasury. Therefore, he, the leader, should look to the treasury first. That is so very relevant even today. Thank you very much. Thank you for the patience.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your valuable inputs on the budget and the impact on the education sector. Now I request Ms. Asha to address the session.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much. It's post lunch and I'm speaking at the end. So before I kind of go on to the budget, I thank MyLogic team for having me here, and respected Nair Sir, Ramki Sir, and Srikumar Sir. I think Nair Sir mentioned that he feels he's least qualified. I think that kind of was a very modest comment, sir. I'm least experienced in this group. I've been very privileged to be part of this panel and kind of shared my views. And I am not a tax person, pure accountant, been into the accounting profession for 15 years and working with industries on different finance matters. So the perspectives I bring is definitely more of a common man perspectives, right? Common woman perspectives, if we have to kind of make it more specific. Right? So on that, I can start. I think this probably, there's so many things, Nair Sir, you discussed, and Ram Sir, you discussed, and Shri Sir, you also discussed about it. So what really the budget actually got for a common man is, I think, what I would discuss. But before that, what are the two major things? As Nair Sir mentioned, technology is one thing which, of course, we can't escape with, right? So digital is the next trend. We're calling Bitcoin is the next gold of internet, right? So that's the way I think the Bitcoin is ruling today. Bitcoin is actually is an enabling coin to purchase all the cryptocurrencies today, and the way the miners are coming up in the world. The startup industry is growing, right? At the age of 19, people are starting up with e-commerce companies. They're talking about 10 minutes delivery, 15 minutes delivery. I think the word is kind of just going at a speed, and everyone is talking about the speed is an essence, and that can only be achieved by digital and technology intervention. So I would probably touch upon what really the budget gave on the technology side. That will be part one of my discussion. And part two is, I know I saw Rupa in the chat asking about a question on cryptocurrency, what really budget had from a crypto perspective. We know there was nothing, but it at least created a curiosity for people to know what is crypto, and I think it created an awareness, right? So that was, I think, a great part of the budget. At least it brought virtual digital assets to the common understanding of people, and there's a curiosity for people to know about it. I'll touch upon crypto a bit, and then maybe just touch upon very high level as part three of my discussion on which industries probably felt that they were left out, right? So I work with industries across, and I've been kind of providing the accounting advisory services across the clients, and there's a common feeling across some industries that we were left out and we were not being really considered as part of the overall budget process. And there were many views, I think, that came up. Some set of people were happy. I think that always happens. The size of an India that we have and the number of people we have, the comments is always going to be varied. We'll have all extremes of people. But I think there were certain industries who expressed very genuine, I think that wouldn't maybe use a word called concern, but a very genuine interest on what could have been done better for them. So I'll touch upon that. So coming to point one on technology intervention in the budget, I will just maybe share the screen. I just have 2 slides. It would be kind of just helpful to have a flow. Let me know if you can see the screen, sir.
Yeah, it is visible.
Sure. So I'll put it in the presentation mode.
Yeah.
So I think from a technology sector or technology point of view, the budget had quite a lot. We know recently, before even all of this, I think discussion on the budget, there was a infinity group that was set up by our Honorable Prime Minister and the team around, which kind of spoke on how do we evolve the fintech industry in India, right? And this group had participation from 70 countries, and we are saying by 2025 we'll be a 5 trillion digital economy, and that means to say the entire world is looking up to us. So today I work across the continent. I mean, I kind of start with journey early morning with APAC regions and work a bit with EMEA regions and work on US regions as part of my responsibility. And I hear a very positive vibes across the globe about the Indian talent, right? They're very acceptable to take Indian talent and use Indian talent as a natural trusted advisor to them. I guess all of that was possible because we're talking in line with what the word is talking about, and we are thinking, being ahead of technology, creating those amazing talent within India from a technology side. Today, we talk about any of the great companies, right? We know Google CEO, right? We know, I think the most vibrant CEOs in the technology sector are coming from the India background. So that's, I think, the very, very strong foundation for India. Keeping that in mind, I think budget did had very fascinating things about technology, including setting up of a digital university and the Deshtak e-portal. Digital university is going to be very amazing for the Indian upskilling of our people, right? Reskilling of our people, getting our people up to speed with the way the DeFi industry is moving, the tech industry is moving. If you kind of just go back, I think a little bit, maybe 10 years ago, when I just started probably my career as an executive and started to talk to clients directly and the management directly, I always thought technology means just Oracle, SAP, implementation of technology platforms, right? Now we redefine technology. We have ad techs, we have ed techs, we have fintechs, we have reg techs, right? I mean, everything and anything is a technology today. And every platform is based on the technology. So digital university is a very good move in the budget about, I think, having a reskilling and upskilling initiatives in India. The budget did speak about an intention of introducing a digital currency within India, which is central bank digital currency. Of course, I will touch upon crypto a little while, maybe just 2 minutes from now. And I'm conscious we have 15 minutes probably to end. I'll take 5 minutes overall to sum up my discussion. But central bank digital currency is in line with USDT, which is basically the currency which is issued in US. That's called stable coin. Let's say if central bank issues the digital currency, there are questions around whether they would issue this on the Ethereum or a Binance platform, or would they issue this as part of the entire blockchain platforms? Or how does this work? I think there are multiple questions, but we'll have to see how this evolves over the period of time. One side, I think one school of thought of a government is that we do not want to legalize crypto at this point of time, right? There is no enforceability for the crypto or a smart contracts in the world. But another side, of course, the budget wants to tax crypto transactions. Of course, it's not immediate, but it is 2023 onwards. But there is a clue that's been given in the budget that we will start taxing the crypto, and there's a TDS requirements to cut the tax at source. 1% of, I think, the proceeds at source is what I think the budget called out that will be cut. This is another interesting area that we have to watch, and it's evolving. It's evolving very lightning speed. And I think the rural-urban divide, right? The 75 digital bank initiative is another thing. So the banking and the digital banking and the post office schemes and centralization of the post office schemes is another area the budget called out with. And this is a very significant move in the financial services sector. That's kind of a very predominant sector from an India perspective. And we are known for fairly strong governance in the financial services system across the world, and very monitored fintechs and payment banks, right? So kind of regulated sector from a banking and financial services point of view. But this move, I'm sure, is going to give a lot of startups to emerge further in the sector. So we'll kind of find out, we'll have to wait and watch how this digital banking initiatives will move. Drone Shakti is another thing which budget called out. I guess that's in the Economist, right, where we call out what are the 10 top trends which are happening in the world. Drone is one of the top trend, right? So whether it is drone delivery or whether it is, the transactions that are delivered through drone, I guess this is going to be another, we would say, transformational change that's going to happen. It's called out even in the agricultural sector. Many startups are encouraged to take the power of the drone and start to promote the drone usage. The budget also laid specific use of drone intelligence and technology to modernize seamlessly, I think, provide services in education, banking, transportation, infrastructure. I guess a lot of things I think would emerge from the drone technology point of view. So that's another area which budget called out, and Nair Sir mentioned about the startups, right? The startups are going to emerge in this field. Atmanirbhar Bharat is something which is a technology enabler. The budget gave focus on Atmanirbhar Bharat scheme overall, right? Special Economic Zone Act, I think, is another step towards revamping the complete, I think, technology side of it, and also promoting more companies to get into an SEZ zone. So that was another thing I think the budget called out. E-passports, customs national portal, interlinking MSME portals, launching a national digital health platform. I guess a lot of digital initiatives the budget had the focus on. I think the kind of policies and the technologies that would emerge, the budget is trying to support all of it. We also have cryptocurrency bill that will probably shortly be kind of introduced for public comments, but once it comes up, probably a DeFi word also would see more focus on it. This was on technology sector. A lot more I think is happening in technology sector, but I guess largely digitization of the banks, financial services, drone and digitization, the encouraging startups of the digital world. I guess that was the overall theme of the budget seemed to be, and that's much needed for the economic development of our country. Now, if you look at, I think from a crypto perspective, right? So crypto, of course, not many people are willing to talk about crypto, and awareness is also seeming to be less, at least for me as a chartered accountant, right? When someone said crypto, I always thought it's a rocket science. The miners are, someone who is kind of fictitious. We can't see them. They have to do very intense work to mine the currencies or the coins. But what I understand is every software engineer with a bit of a knowledge on blockchain is able to mine currencies now. It's blockchain or cryptocurrencies becoming a medium to buy goods and services, right? To buy, I think, even Tesla, for that matter, said you can buy Tesla car using Bitcoin, right? So the market is very sentimental. We understand it's very speculative, not regulated today. But when I interact with the global platforms, right? US, of course, is making it very regulated and centralized, and most of the shopping complexes in US started to accept Bitcoins or crypto coins as a medium of exchange. We'll have to, I think, from an India perspective, there are, of course, two schools of thought. One is that it's too early to regulate it. Another school of thought is, why don't we actually start accepting crypto as a currency? It's a virtual currency. We understand, right? There are a lot of startups, I think, which have come up. Nishchal Shetty, who is a WazirX founder, is very bullish about the way the India market would go in the crypto space, right? There is an estimation that by 2025, at least 20% of an India population will be into the blockchain. I think at least familiar with the blockchain network, and they'll start to use the blockchain platforms and the crypto platforms and start having those currencies. So in that direction, I think the government is right now not talking about legalizing it, but they've introduced the virtual digital asset concept, and thereby the 30% of the tax is introduced under 115 BBH, right? For all the transactions of crypto, including the gift, like even if you gift a cryptocurrency or even if you transact or sell the cryptocurrency, there will be 30% straight tax. This doesn't seem to be a new provision, but what the budget said was it was always there. Other income was always there, and the lottery income or any kind of speculative income was always taxed at 30%. Now I think that they're kind of giving a message that it is like speculative income. But the questions which are arising, the economists are kind of arguing on both the sides. One side, they're saying it's very good. They started to introduce, which means some point of time they'll legalize, acceptance will increase. Another school of thought is saying that, does it mean to say, is it illegal income? The government is silent. They're not saying whether it's legal, illegal. They're only saying we'll tax, right? And tax doesn't go on the legality of the income ever. That was never the premise of the taxation. It was you earn it, you pay taxes. I think that's what the government is calling out. They're also saying the loss arising from the trade of this virtual digital assets cannot be set off against any other income. It cannot be carried forward to subsequent years, right? And I think these are like some of the points from the taxation perspective. Even the source of 1%, whenever we do a crypto transaction, at least 1% of the TDS has to be deducted. So saying all of it, what is really the practical challenge of the people today? They're saying, how do we even know what is a source? Today, we've got two exchanges, centralized exchange and a decentralized exchange in a crypto world. A centralized exchange, at least you know who are the holders, right, of the account and who are holding probably the currencies. But in a decentralized exchange, source is not known. When it originates and when it vanishes, when it is sold, no one understands. These are all used in cold wallets, sometimes which are not even traced in the internet. So the challenge is government has given this provision, but how do we practically implement it? There are questions in the industry that how do we even figure out what is a source, right, from an overall crypto perspective. So this is, I think, on a crypto and the technology. What are the feelings in the market? At least if you personally ask me, the budget was fairly silent on pandemic affected people. Or I think that's one of the things which could have been done better. There were many people who were affected by pandemic. employments were lost, right? I think the budget did not really provide much relief to the pandemic affected people. Salaried class was of course not too happy because slab rates were not changed. People were actually commenting, why don't we get home office allowances? Today, all of us are sitting in the home. I've occupied one room, right? I'm paying additional rent because I wanted a room to work for myself. And then there's an additional expenditure that we've invested in the technology, in the space that we are sitting. So there are comments on why not home allowances, why standard deduction not increased, right? And it's retained the same. That is a salary class. I think the salaried mindset on the budget. The industry is saying mostly the restaurants and the hotel industry was not given a relief again, right? Because of the pandemic, more than 60% of the jobs which were lost were from the food sector, right? So specifically from the industry which was into the hotels and restaurants. So they had the feeling that why no relief was provided to us and not much was called out. Healthcare industry had a bit concern because the focus on the budget when they allocated things were more on the mental health, not really on COVID anymore. I think as Nair Sir rightly said, we have before COVID, during COVID, and after COVID. The thinking the pandemic is over and it is all seeming to be the post-pandemic budget. That's a mindset of the budget, and thereby not much regard has been given to at least the healthcare, vaccination, that side. I think the budget is silent, but mental health care has been taken care. I think those were like some of the immediate reflections of the industry. Some sectors were not too happy. Some sectors were decent about the kind of interventions which came up in the budget. I'll pause here. I know it's a ocean. I kind of summed up some of the immediate reactions that I had on the budget, but we can have endless conversations. But I'll pause here and hand it back, Chaitanya Sir, to you for taking questions.
Well spoke.
Thank you, Asha, for enlightening us on some dark subject like crypto.
It's very lively, sir. I'm going to talk about it. Actually, today 6 to 8, I'm speaking in ICI forum on crypto accounting. It is amazing subject actually. So we'll have more conversations around it. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So due to time constraints, we will quickly move on to question and answers. Some of our listeners, viewers who are awake, they have posted some questions. Yeah, this one is from Nikita, and this is to Asha. What is the impact of cryptocurrency on the banking sector? And are there any advantages to a common man or woman?
Women. Yes. So I guess the banking sector right now is only figuring out tokenization, right? So what they're trying to do is to introduce their own currencies or maybe introduce cryptographic assets by getting into a tokenization as a process. Not much impact immediately on the banking sector, as most of the crypto is in the startup zone right now, right? All of these crypto sectors are the startups. The banking is still catching up with the speed at which I think the startups are evolved in this sector. So I would not say there's an immediate impact on the banking sector, but of course they have a huge severe competition because the kind of, I think the funds which are moving and the kind of peer-to-peer networks which are fintech industries are evolving, right? The kind of insurtech world is moving in terms of providing different types of insurance policies. That way, I think there'll be some impact more from a industry competition point of view, but not much from the budget side. That's my view. Will there be any advantages to a common man from a crypto perspective? It's just the awareness. I think right now it's just more people are curious about it. In fact, I was talking to one of the founders and he said people are now gifting crypto because they're very, it's just kind of fun for them to just start venturing what it is. No advantages in the budget per se, but I think it's created more awareness, curiosity for people to know what it is, right? And why is it been so much called out? And as I said, Bitcoin is the gold of internet right now. It's been mined and mined and mined by 2140. By I think year 2140 is when the Bitcoin mining will get over and all the coins will be out in the market. We'll have to see. I'm conscious in 2009, there's a person in Mumbai who bought a Bitcoin at $200, right? If you know today, the price on an average, if I take is $40,000, which is around 40 lakh rupees. There's so many funny things I think about this industry. It's very heavily driven by sentiments and emotions, and we don't know what is creating the volatility in the market. It's not performance driven industry. So common man has to be very conscious and careful. Just have some fun investment, probably have some risk capital. I think just watch out how the trend goes on.
Thank you, Asha. And we have
Srikumar Sir, I just want to add on to what Asha had said. Funnily, if you really look at it, they call it a virtual digital asset, or you call it NFT, non-fungible token, whatever it is. See, this is a very strange case of thing being taxed without being regulated.
Yeah.
Funny, very funny. See, normally regulation comes, and after the regulations, the taxes, penalties, etc. come.
Yeah.
Here is a very strange situation where government in a manner, tacit manner, says that we understand that there is crypto, but we don't want to acknowledge it actually. Okay, but we'll tax you. That is
exactly.
but that is the level at which things are. That is one element, one factor of it. The other factor of it is the common man. I think while what Asha said about common man understanding crypto is okay, but common man actually transacting crypto will take quite a bit of time. I'm saying common man, I'm not saying the techies, and I'm not saying the entrepreneurs. I'm saying the common man. See, a man who keeps 100 rupees in his pocket and go to a shop and buys the bread and come back, for him crypto is far away. So so today it's a virtual asset, digital virtual asset. It has to be treated like that. But I think a lot of evolution has to happen as far as crypto is concerned. Now because this is something like an unknown animal,
everyone is curious about it.
Everyone is curious about it.
I think it's there in 2009. You're right. Actually, just we are now getting it. 2009 is when the Bitcoin was released at $1, right? $1 is the coin. There was a person who actually paid 10,000 coins to buy 2 pizzas. This was, I think, early 2010. So I'm sure he would have committed suicide by now, right? So he would have been a millionaire, actually speaking. But you're right. It's kind of evolving. It is, and does it vanish physical currency? It can never vanish physical currency. It can never. But it's just kind of a different way. I think we transact things. And Nair Sir, you're right. The Wazir ex-founder is saying only 20% of the population on a very aggressive basis could get to crypto by 2025, and which means 80% of the people would not even know about it, right? And we need to have, forget about, I think, crypto, we still don't have everybody having bank accounts, right? Yes. So we got this Jan Dhan Yojana and got some large population to get to the bank accounts, but even today, the entire population doesn't have bank accounts.
Ramakrishnan Sir has some points.
Yeah, I think a couple of things. One is, of course, discussion on crypto. But crypto is based on the blockchain technology, and that I think has a lot of impact, a lot of potential, and it just transcends multiple industries and multiple situations. So that I think we must recognize.
Yes.
And blockchain probably will become more mainstream.
Yeah.
I mean, mainstream within course than crypto, perhaps. Right. The second aspect is, I think the question was with respect to the impact on the banking sector. But if you look at it, the biggest impact on the banking sector has been because of the UPI, the digital wallet
payments,
and payment systems. Huge, because it has cut into the credit card business, debit card business. It has cut into cash circulation. Of course, cash circulation, despite all this, is still high, but that has made a big impact on the banking system, and it has happened over just a period of 3-4 years, right? So I think these are two interesting side discussions on the question. I thought it is important to talk about it.
Well said. Blockchain, you have really touched upon that very well, sir, actually, because the technology behind crypto is something that has to be watched for. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ramki Sir, Asha, and Asha Sir. So here we have another question from Nikita. She has a questioning mind. So she is the second question from her. I would want to know the tax advantages, benefits provided for the below. 1, education sector. 2, middle class family. So I see Ramki Sir shaking his head. So would you take this question?
I I think on the education sector, I think, Srikumar, I think you covered all the various aspects where there has been and I think Ms. Asha also talked. I think it's more than any budget proposals. A lot of emphasis on the education sector and the use of technology and the use of digital technologies to really accelerate what has been happening. So that is what I think one has to look at. On the middle class family, as I think it's already been discussed, in the current budget, there has been absolutely no touching
Changes,
on
basically.
any personal taxation proposals. So I think from that aspect, in fact, no area except I think something to do with what you call medical benefits. There is some
Pandemic expenses, they said, will be
pandemic
allowed 100% and things
yes,
like that.
Pandemic related expenditure, yes, it is. If there is a company helps an employee, or even if it is not an employer, if somebody else helps, that is not taxable in the hands of the recipient. But of course, if it is a non-employer, I think there is a limit of some 10 lakhs. And the fine print is there are still rules around it to be still announced. So there are going to be some conditionalities around availing of this. But that is perhaps the only aspect which is there. Other than that, there is nothing.
Sir, with permission, just want to touch upon the education part because that point came out. On the education side, as the panel discussion, continued. We are discussing about an education going through a revolutionary times. Education is no more going to be the same as was in past because it will be always going to be hybrid. Now, coming to that, if you look at the budget aspect also, it has been emphasized with a lot on the digital education. That is why you see a lot of features like Prime Minister's e-Vidya, quoted 200 channels coming up. We are discussing about digital universities. All these things were part of the budget discussion and followed by, that is where Ramki Sir was mentioning about the implementation part. Immediately, month after, even not even 1 month over, UGC coming up with 900 autonomous colleges allowing degree, online degrees permanent. So we in education
have gone up,
yeah, in education segment, definitely we are going to have many changes, particularly with more emphasis coming on EdTech. And of course, budget is just a start, long way to go on that. Touched upon that point.
Thank you, Vinod, Asha, Ramki. I think you have clarified. Now there is a question from Mr. Praveen. I have a question on startup registration. Is exemption extended till March 2023?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yes, it has been extended by 1 year.
Yeah. Right. 1 more year is coming.
No, this could even go on because, being a lot of the encouragement being given to startup. So they from time to time, they will keep on announcing all these soaps to startup community. I'm sure the startup community is here to gain a lot from any budget that is going to be announced. So I think it's for some more time to come. It is really going to be an enjoyable time as far as startup community is concerned.
Thank you, SR sir. Now we have Mr. Ganesh. He has a query. How does this budget support or to be helpful for skill development of youth? So this is perhaps a question for Mr. Vinod.
All right. So this is exactly continuation of the changes which is happening post, particularly I would say post COVID. The emphasis has been always given for how from an employer's perspective how specific you can make it. That is why the gig economies, we were discussing about gig economies. How it can be more specific, a person specific to the job. That is the move which is happening in industry as a whole. We have been associated with a lot of global MNCs wherein the assignment, the conventional model has been changed. Today, they're looking, a person who may not be required for a permanent role, who is required on a contract or an assignment basis, You finish it off, you do whatever, other engagement, absolutely doesn't matter. It is specific to that particular task. So that is where, the importance of skill development, the highlight being more given to the skill development aspect. And also this is not just on the industry segment, even on the education segment. If you come back, national education revised policies, which is coming up, you find a lot of skill development programs happening from your 11th standard onwards. So there is a whole lot of significance being given to the skill development programs, and which will continue to move on as we progress.
Thank you, Vinod. I am tempted to ask Mr. Ramakrishnan one question, which has been always, I wanted to ask him, and it's a very suitable occasion. I think the rest of the viewers will also benefit, hopefully, from what he says on this. See, there have been a lot of talk earlier, prior to the budget and even earlier budget. The income tax should be completely abolished for all the salaried people. So what do you think? Is it something practical or not?
What is the alternative? Government has to raise resources. So if there are some schools of thought which say income tax should be abolished. And they say that, okay, have an expenditure tax, basically, or a consumption tax, right? But nowhere in the world actually it has been implemented. This concept of expenditure tax or consumption tax has been there for at least last 150 years. People have been talking about it. Because I think the practicality of implementing it and the fear that because you will get lesser tax, because to the extent of savings, you will not be able to tax. But having said that, in a sense, your indirect taxes are also linked to consumption, right? Though they are actually they are not meant to be on consumption. They are meant to be on production or provision of services. Essentially, it comes back to if business activity is there, then you will have more indirect tax. So it's a consumption led. So, but I don't think income tax will get abolished. Once in a while, somebody will talk about it, but I don't think we'll get.
Probably not.
I just want to add on to
human evolution.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah. Thing is, I think we need to, the bracket of people on the income tax is still very, very low as a percentage of the population, or as a percentage of even people who are earning. The total number of people in terms of the actual number of people who are paying tax is very low. So we need to really increase the tax bracket. At the same time, see that people who are salary class for the income tax components are reduced, so that the percentages are reduced. Okay. While I really stand for the entrepreneur, but I am also of the opinion that people who are really making big profits must be taxed high. People, companies, organizations, whatever, they should be taxed high. But that is not the trend that we see across the world. Where you look at all these developed economies, people who are on the upper end, they don't actually pay tax. They have these integrated formalities and they end up in paying zero taxes. Whereas a guy who actually makes 10 lakhs rupees salary per annum, he has to pay the tax and then file it up. I think we need to improve the tax bracket. We need to reduce salary class taxes, as well as we need to increase taxes as far as people on the higher ends are concerned. And that is where I believe a lot of concealing happens also. I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry. Yeah, please, sir. Yeah.
No, I'm sorry for interjecting. No, tax inequity has to go. And second is, I think you mentioned about sections of the population are not paying agricultural income, for instance. The significant agricultural incomes which are escaping anything on tax. Right. So there are challenges around it. And the salaried class is the one which the most compliant, because it is deducted at source.
Yes.
And the collection expenditure for the government is also nil, because the responsibility is placed on the employers. So the cost of collection, cost of enforcement, cost of monitoring, etc., is the least. But unfortunately, they still have to go through the entire rigmarole. But it will not go away. And I agree with Professor that you'll have to bring it down. You have to and increase it from the other sections.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Ramki. Thank you, SR Sir. I think now we are coming to the close of the session. I would like to invite Mr. Vinod Chandran to say a few words. Over to you, Vinod. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Srikumar Sir. So I have been assigned with the responsibility of giving a brief about what MyLogic exactly into. Also conclude the session with word of thanks. Quickly, for the interest of everyone, I'm just sharing the screen to show our platform. This is what MyLogic into. We are having a course, a bundle of courses, around 12 courses at this moment. International finance professional programs. We provide in a single platform. Anybody wants to do any of this finance professional programs, which has relevance across the globe, they can approach us and we provide through our, dashboard. That is exactly.
Voice problem, I believe, or is it mine only?
Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, but I believe I am losing some part of it. I don't know whether it is my problem or it's a problem. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Audible?
Yes,
Am I audible?
Now audible.
Yeah. All right. So this is exactly anybody, any part of the world wanted to pursue any finance professional program, a single platform. That is the way, that is the vision with which we move. In fact, a couple of days I got a call directly from Felicia Hill. She is somewhere in Anguilla, somewhere in Eastern Caribbean islands, settled in US. So she wanted to pursue CPA program. She was searching across the globe. She got a lot of contents available, a lot of resources available. But the real-time classes, the way if she wants to pursue a real-time classes, if she come across any doubts, immediately clarifying those doubts, which was not available. So that's why she approached us, and today she enrolled. What I was trying to say, across the globe there is a system exists wherein people are not able to access real-time extensive level of training support for finance professional program, and we try to fill that gap. Also, I take this opportunity. It doesn't mean that it is only to the people who have the access or the privileged category. We also our tagline says that transforming career. With permission of Mr. Bharat, I have want to just share a couple of photos wherein how we helped or what we meant by transforming career. Mr. Bharat came to us a couple of years back with he was just finished graduation, and he wanted to, with very ambitious student, and he wanted to pursue finance professional programs, and we started supporting. This is with permission of Bharat I have taken. This inspires a lot of youngsters for watching us. And today, Bharat is, have undergone interview with a couple of leading global MNCs because he has completed certified management accountant program. The transformation happens in a couple of years. And this is exactly what we intend, even to the remote rural village, any person intend to pursue finance professional program from any part of the world should be able to do. That's exactly what MyLogic is aiming at and supporting it. I'm coming to the second part of our discussion, conclusion, and I'm privileged to have the vote of thanks for this session. Ramki sir, thank you so much. Your session started with, reminding of the golden era of Palkiwala's speeches. You touched upon the areas of, the general aspects of various budget aspects, the legal changes to be incorporated, the significance of it you have highlighted, and the tremendous improvement in budget which is happening over the time has been highlighted, as well as the agile method of implementation which is being introduced in budget speech that makes more significance, which is being highlighted. And most importantly, the importance of visiting upon the economic survey part. Okay, so that previous day to budget that being touched upon. Thank you so much, sir. It was very enlightening session from your side. We are privileged to have you part of the session. Thank you, sir. Thank you once again. Thank you. We next move to SR Sir. SR Sir was touching upon the overall economic survey, which touched upon the various aspects of budget, touched upon the various GDP parameters, the growth rates, etc. being highlighted. particularly touched upon the importance of railway, how much railway plays a pivotal role in the national growth. Also moved on to the IPOs, the quantum of IPO which is coming up, and past which has been incurred has been touched upon. The startup ecosystem and the startup, Philip, which is being highlighted in SR's session. Also, SR concluded saying the importance of housing sector, how it is relevant, because that can touch upon the every aspects of various industry. Thank you, SR, for that enlightening session, which was very, has introduced a lot of different dimensions to it. Later, we moved on to Srikumar Sir's sessions. Srikumar Sir was particularly touched upon the education part of it, the e-Vidya part, which is being highlighted. The Vishwaguru concept has been touched upon. The budget highlights on education, national education policies, etc., has been touched upon by Srikumar Sir. Thank you, Srikumar Sir, for enlightening the students with sessions more touching upon the education part. Later on, we moved out to Madam Asha. It was more on a technological aspects we touched upon, the changes which is happening or the highlighted on the technological sector, Ms. Asha was highlighting. Also given a new dimension or new thoughts, the so-called dark areas of cryptocurrency was touched upon by Ms. Asha. That really helped. Also, withholding tax impact on the virtual, digital currencies. Also, the virtual digital assets were touched upon by Ms. Asha. Asha, thank you so much for this very enlightening session, which was helpful for getting into new dimensions. Also, I thank the participants. Was definitely has got a lot of insights from it. The MyLogic team who has been able to gather this event in a short notice and made it grand success. Thank you so much, everyone, once again on behalf of MyLogic, for being part of it and throwing your lights on it. We look forward to more enlightening sessions like this in future. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Great day.
Thank you. Thank you.